The Fellowship of the Ring takes on a difficult journey in The Lord of the Rings, but how old is each member of the group? Well, in most cases, much older than they look. Unfortunately, many of their true ages were lost in the transition from page to screen, but some of Tolkien's writings do reveal how and why some characters are much older than they appear. I'm Greg Elliott with Screen Rant, and this is how old each Fellowship member really is when the group first formed at Rivendell.
Today is my 111th birthday!
The Fellowship of the Ring begins with Bilbo's 111st birthday and Frodo's 33rd, but in the book, 17 years passes after Bilbo leaves before Frodo goes on his own adventure with the One Ring, which makes him 50 years old at the start of it all. In the film, the gap in time is never specified, but it definitely doesn't feel like 17 years, which means that movie Frodo is likely much younger than book Frodo, especially if you consider that Elijah Wood was only 18 when filming started.
Mr. Frodo's not going anywhere without me.
In the film, Sam and Frodo are best friends and appear to be the same age, and Sam's habit of calling him Mr. Frodo just seems like a weird thing that Sam just does, but in the books, he actually does it out of respect, as he A, has a lower status within Hobbit society than Frodo, and B, because Frodo actually is his elder, with Samwise only being a spry 38 years old.
Gandalf.
Yes, I'm here.
There are actually two equally legitimate answers when it comes to Gandalf's age. On one hand, as one of the Maya named Alorin, Gandalf is as old as time itself, but he later took physical form to help deal with Sauron shortly after the first millennium of the Third Age. And since the Fellowship was formed in 3018, by that math, Gandalf is around 2000, although his true form is much more ancient.
You cannot be 80.
87.
You are one of the Dunedain.
In Tolkien's world, certain lines of men, while still mortal, live longer than the average human, like 87-year-old Aragorn. Aragorn is a descendant of the Dunedain, a race of men who, after helping defeat the evil Morgoth, were gifted lifespans of up to several hundred years. These gifts began to fade gradually over time, so Aragorn might not live quite as long as his ancestors once did, but he's still looking pretty good for a guy pushing 90. Legolas is one of the few main characters that Tolkien never actually dates specifically. His father was born in the First Age, so he could have been born as early as the Second Age, over 3,000 years before the Fellowship of the Ring, but it's equally possible that he was born in the Third Age, which would put him at only a few hundred years old. Clues within the books are conflicting, but let's just say that he's really old, most likely somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000.
That still only counts as one!
And in the Tolkienverse, dwarves live longer than men do, but not nearly as long as elves, typically between 200 and 300 years. And as he was born in 2879 of the Third Age, Gimli is a relatively young dwarf then, being 139 years old when the Fellowship was formed.
Welcome, my lords, to Isengard.
Merry and Pippin are portrayed in the films as more or less the same age as Frodo, which in Merry's case at least, isn't far off from the books. At 36, he's slightly younger than Sam, but he's also Frodo's cousin, so there's no class difference between them, but he still shows respect to Frodo, and their age difference might account for why. And Gandalf calling Pippin a fool of a took makes a lot more sense when you realize that Pippin was only 28 years old in the book, which makes him the youngest of the crew and basically a baby by everybody else's standards.
Sorry.
Boromir's age in The Lord of the Rings might be the most surprising. Due to his noble bloodline, he was gifted a longer lifespan like Aragorn, but Boromir was much younger, only 40. In both the books and films, Boromir is less wise, less strong, and of lower standing than Aragorn, but there's also a big age difference with Aragorn more than twice his age. Obviously, the movies had to make some concessions with casting, but with Viggo Mortensen and Sean Bean actually being the same age, that difference in seniority didn't come quite across on screen. Alright guys, that's it for this one. I hope you learned something and keep coming back to Screen Rant to stay up on all things Middle-earth. I'm Greg Elliott, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.